Welcome to something a little bit different for BBB, a little bit of a break from the norm of the interviews, the podcast chats, all that sort of thing we normally do. Thought we'd have a little look at the previous batch of Olympians. We've got this current or most recent crop looking to turn pro. A few have already announced their intentions with the McCormack twins from our neck of the woods signing with Probellum. We've got the likes of Lauren Price, Ben Whitaker, sort of rumoured with a few promoters, but nothing set in stone as yet. So obviously a lot of hype around these, and there's a lot of prestige around Olympic medalists. Obviously Galal Yafai coming back with the gold, a few others, to be thinking about and to keep your eye on over the next few years. But with all that in mind, we thought we'll take a little bit of a look back and have a look at the class of 2016, the lads and lasses coming back from Rio, turning pro, we're talking 5 or 6 years ago now, and have a little look where they are now and what they've achieved so far in the paid ranks, where their futures lie, and as a little bit of a back to school theme, I thought we'll give them a grade as well. So hopefully we'll provoke a little bit of thought, give you something to think about and discuss. For those of you who are in this for the long haul, this will be put together as one long video, but we'll also break it up in each individual fighter if you've got an attention span like I do. Nice little 5 minutes or so chunks on each fighter. So without further ado, we will start at the top. We'll go from heavyweight and we'll work our way down through the weight classes. I'll give my thoughts on what they've done so far as professionals, and we'll put a little bit of a grading on there as well. Drop a comment below, however you're watching or listening to this, whether you agree, whether you disagree. If you think, as you may well do, that I am way off with my judging, we will see. As I said, start with the heavyweight himself, or super heavyweight as he was in the Olympics in the amateur code. We've got Joe the Juggernaut Joyce. Record there, 13 wins, no defeats. That's fairly impressive on paper anyway, but I think what you've got to do with Joe is look a little bit more at that and see why it's so impressive. Being a little bit older, they have pushed him and progressed him through the paid ranks quite quickly. I think you look no further than his debuts, chucked in with Ian Lewison, not your normal 4-rounder. He's been put in there in a long contest. They've got no issue. His management, his promotion side of things, no issue putting him in there with challenges. And already less than 15 fights in, he's had a very, very fast introduction to the paid ranks. Very, very competitive matchmaking as much as you can. You want him to learn on the job. He's a very experienced fighter. I think you'll just have to look at some of his wins compared to other heavyweights with even more fights than he has. There's some faded world names on there, like Bermane Stiverne. He's gone through, he's picked up the Commonwealth title very early on in his career, dismantling Roy Thomas. Some very impressive performances, and none more so than the Daniel Dubois fight. That was one that many people were picking against him. It was a tough fight for him. He was seen as, even though he was signed and still is, I believe, signed with Queensberry Promotions, he was seen as the away fighter, the underdog going into that. And the biggest compliment I can play the big man is he made an absolute mockery of those predictions and anyone backing against him. He showed his class, showed his power, showed his durability, his experience, whatever you want to say. He showed that in beating Dubois. Not only did he take the British title in that one, but also took a lot of the sort of world rankings, these fringe belts that I'm not going to focus on too much. But the position he's in, and yeah, I think he's 35, 36 years old now. He's worked his way up to that bottleneck towards the top of the heavyweight division. A bit up in the air is what's going to happen with that and all the belts. But he's well ranked with a lot of those sanctioning bodies. He's done things the right way. He's picked up the domestic titles. He's beaten domestic rivals. He's beaten, as I say, fringe world contenders. And he's put himself in a fantastic position so far in, as I said, well, you can see there on the screen, 13 fights. It's not to be sniffed at. And for that, I'm going to give Joe the Juggernaut Joyce a very favourable A. I think I've justified that in what he's done so far as a pro. I think he's very, very well positioned. He's underrated, I would say, by quite a few people still. It's not, he's not the flashiest necessarily. I know there's been a lot said about his his lack of charisma and personality outside of the ring. But these rankings, I'm judging this purely on what they've achieved in the ring. And to pick up the domestic titles that he's done, to put himself in that world position, he's, depending on what you read and what you believe, he's next in line, depending on the Usyk-Joshua rematch. Very well positioned with a few of the sanctioned bodies, but in particular the WBO. And he's in a little bit of a sort of dilemma at the minute, because you don't want him to be inactive. You don't want him to lose the momentum that, pardon the pun, he's built up as a juggernaut. He's getting that full head of steam, and you want to see him in competitive fights. It's now that risk against reward situation. There's other similarly ranked contenders, the likes of Joseph Parker, that would make excellent fights. Does he want to risk those sorts of fights? Are they worth the reward? Is he going to sit tight and wait for that world title shot? It'll be very interesting to see where he goes from here, just how much risk he wants to take. And hopefully for him, I think he gets that world title shot. He gets something that his career and his performances so far have deserved. But he's shown that he'll roll the dice. He's not afraid. And more importantly, I think his matchmakers and his promotional and management teams, they're not afraid to put him in with what you would sort of perceive as very tough challenges and tough tests for any other prospect. It seems bizarre talking about someone as experienced as Joe as a prospect, but after so few fights, he's still at that level. And to be considered some sort of prospect, but still be in the world title mix and be in the, I would argue quite confidently, in the top 10 at world level, like it's not to be sniffed at, and he deserves the praise, and that's why I've given him that fairly high ranking of an A.